I'm really glad that I got asked this question. See, I've held off on making a video about this for a while because my reversion story is a little bit different than most other people's that I've heard. So for context, I'm 21. I'm about to be 22. I turned 22 in a little bit over a month. And I accepted Islam when I was 18. So that gives me 3-4 years, give or take, that I've been a Muslim so far. So in case you couldn't already tell, I'm from the United States, the southern United States. I'm from the state of Georgia, and I'm from the metro Atlanta area, to be specific. So for those of you who don't really know too much about the geography of the U.S., the state of Georgia is one of the southeasternmost states in the country. And when I was 17, well, basically turning 18, but right before my 18th birthday, I moved from the state of Georgia all the way to the Pacific Northwest to the state of Washington, which is basically on the exact opposite side of the country. Less than a year after arriving in the state of Washington, I was arrested for the first time in my life, charged with attempted robbery in the second degree. And then while I was out on bail for that, I was arrested again for an armed robbery. Well, down here, the charge is called armed robbery. In Georgia, it's called armed robbery, but in the state of Washington, it's just called robbery in the first degree. The second time that I was arrested, I was sitting in my jail cell, and I didn't have much to do but think and reflect on my past decisions. And I basically realized that my life was falling apart. I was ruining my life at the young, ripe age of 18. And at this point, I was an atheist. I didn't come to Islam from Christianity. Obviously, I come from a Christian family. I'm from down south, the Bible Belt. Most everyone down here is a Christian. I left Christianity when I was really young, like 10 or 11. I stopped believing it was true. And this is partly due to my family not having very much knowledge of their own religion in the first place. And then on top of that, I won't say all Christianity, but Southern Baptism at least has this little culture, whatever you want to call it, of don't ask questions, just believe what you're told. And I've never been the type of person to just believe what somebody's telling me just because they're telling it to me. Anyways, before I was arrested, I made some friends, obviously, once I got to the state of Washington. And I won't say I was hanging out with the wrong people because thanks to their influence, ultimately, guidance is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But these were the first Muslims that I was ever around in my life. So while I was sitting in my jail cell, just reflecting on the decisions I made and what my life has led me to up to this point, I decided that I'm at rock bottom. I have nothing for myself. I'm not around any of my family. I'm 2,000 miles away from anyone who I have any type of relation to as far as familial or blood relations. To give a little bit further context, when I was arrested the second time, I was arrested with my ribs broken due to an altercation I had gotten into about a week earlier. And I was also going through withdrawals because I became addicted to a terrible, terrible substance known as fentanyl. So there I was, sitting alone in my jail cell, and I was in isolation. We call it the hole. It's basically, they put you in a cell by yourself. You're allowed to come out for 1 hour a day, and within that hour, you have to use the phone and take a shower all in that hour. And a lot of times at the jail I was in Pierce County Jail in Tacoma, Washington. If you get into the shower before you use the phone, a lot of times the officers will forget that you're even in the shower and you're locked in there. You can't go in and out of the shower as you please. You have to ask them to let you in and out of the shower, and you're locked in there. So a lot of times they'll put you in the shower. They'll forget that they put you in the shower. And by the time that they remember that they put you in the shower, your time is up. So I'm sitting there in my cell, broken physically and mentally. I was going through withdrawals. My body hurt, my spirit hurt, my mind hurt. I was just in the worst pain. And I decided to give religion a try once again. But instead of running back to Christianity, which I had already come to the conclusion was not true, I decided to do like my friends, the people who I was hanging out with, had done, and I decided to give Islam a try. At the time, I basically knew nothing of Islam. I knew that God is called Allah, and I knew that you face east when you pray. And to give a little bit of a example of how little I know, the first time I ever attempted to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I did it in my cell wearing nothing but boxers. But Allah knows everything. He knows your intentions. He knows what you don't know. So I asked the CO who was on duty. I wrote a letter to the chaplain. I asked for the Quran. And I also wrote to the cafeteria or kitchen, whatever you call it. I asked them to put me on the Muslim diet. So they accommodated my dietary request by the very next day. The very next morning, I was no longer receiving haram food from the kitchen. But it took about 2 weeks for me to get the Quran for the first time, though. When I finally got it, I basically read the whole thing front to back in about 3 days. Mind you, I still didn't know how to make salah. I didn't know any hadith. I barely knew anything. I knew what the Quran tells you. And at that, I only knew what the English translation says. So I didn't know how to make salah properly. So basically what I would do, I knew you were supposed to pray 5 times a day. So basically, as soon as I woke up in the morning, I would face the east. I would kneel down. And I would thank Allah for giving me the opportunity to wake up once again. And I would thank him for bringing me one day closer to my freedom. Mind you, this entire time, I had never once set foot in general population in the jail. I had been in isolation, lockdown, the whole time. Finally, after about, I think the exact amount of time was 52 days, but they ended up finally allowing me into general population. And when I first set foot into the unit, probably one of the biggest men I've ever met in my entire life, a Samoan. His name was, we could call him Junebug. Tattoos all over his face. He was a gang member, all that. He walked right up to me and he asked me where I was from. So for those of you who don't know, when you get that question in a jail, they're usually not asking where you're actually from. They're asking if you're a gangbanger and what gang you're from. So I didn't understand the question. And I also was unaware that the jail I was in also enforced racial politics. I told him I was from out of state. I told him I was from Georgia. And he asked me, was I Caucasian? To this day, I really don't know why he asked me that, because it should be obvious enough at this point. But then he told me that apparently because of the way that I walked, moved, and my accent that I have, he told me that he felt like I wasn't going to get along with the other white people in the dorm. And he gave me, I don't want to call it an opportunity, but he asked me, instead of rolling with the whites, did I want to join API, which stands for Asian Pacific Islander. So basically, if you're anything aside from white, black, or Hispanic, you're considered API. Native Americans are considered API. Arabs are considered API. Islanders are considered API. East Asians are considered API. Like I said, anything aside from white, black, or Hispanic, you're API. He asked me, did I want to roll API? And I told him, sure. I don't know nobody around here. He seemed cool enough. He walked right up to me, and he presented himself as firm, but fair also. So I took him up on his opportunity. The first thing I had to do after accepting this was he brought me upstairs to his cell, and he told me that since I'm white and I'm not actually Asian, I had to fight somebody to be able to roll with them. I didn't have to get jumped. I didn't have to fight somebody who was way bigger than me. He let me fight someone, I'll just call him Slim, Cambodian dude. He just let me fight him one-on-one. After I fought him, he let me right in. They gave me food, clothes, all that. Once I got into this unit in general population, there was a book laying in the bin where all the library books were at called Guide for New Muslims. This book taught me all about how to take your shahada. It taught me how to make salah. It taught me about dawah. It has certain hadith in there. Basically everything you need to know to actually get yourself started in Islam. Months go by. I'm kicking it with everybody. I'm cool with everybody. I'm walking around calling myself API. That's the homies. We were all sitting at the table one night, and one of them heard me say Bismillah over my food. He questioned me where I heard that from, and I told him I was a Muslim. I was unaware that you could not be API if you was a Muslim. It turned into a big problem. So right as we're having this little argument, they call for lockdown. Everybody has to go back to your cell for 2 hours. So I go back to my cell, and a few of the APIs were sharing a cell directly above me, and I can hear them. I hear blades being sharpened. I hear all type of talk about how I'm about to get smashed. It's got to be bad. They're about to jump on me when we come out of the cells. One thing I did not want to do was call the COs and slide a note to them and tell them I felt unsafe, because that'll have you labeled as being scary or being scared or something like that. So I prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I said, however I handle this situation, please just make sure I handle it in a way that's pleasing to you. Right after I made this dua, one of the COs came to my cell and asked me where I got this tattoo from. I refused to tell him where I got the tattoo from. So he took me out of the unit and took me right back to the hole. So I didn't have to worry about what was about to happen when we all came off of lockdown. This dua that I made right here, that moment right there is what convinced me that Islam was the truth 100%. And from that day forward, I've stuck to Islam and I will remain a Muslim and I will die as a Muslim.
My beloved brothers and sisters, giving dawah is one of the greatest responsibilities and blessings a Muslim can have. Wherever you are, in school, at work, in the market, or even online, you have the chance to share the message of Islam. Sometimes even a small word, a smile, or a kind act can open someone's heart to the truth. You may not realize it, but your simple efforts could be the reason someone finds the light of Islam. When you share the message of Islam, do it with wisdom, patience, and good manners. People are more likely to listen when they feel respected and understood. Don't argue harshly or try to force anyone. Just explain with kindness and sincerity. Remember, guidance comes only from Allah, but He uses us as means to deliver the message. Even if the person you speak to doesn't accept Islam right away, your effort is never wasted. Allah rewards every attempt you make to call people to Him. Whether the results are visible or not, you are planting seeds of truth in someone's heart, and maybe one day, with Allah's will, those seeds will grow. So never underestimate your role in dawah. Share Islam wherever you are, in whatever way you can, through words, actions, or even by showing your best character. You never know whose life you might touch and who might be guided through you. And remember, the reward for guiding even one person to Islam is greater than this world and everything in it.